If I lost my job tomorrow, I wouldn't panic, but I would switch modes. Not because everything would suddenly be fine, but because I've thought through what happens if salary income disappears earlier than planned. In this video, I want to talk through how my portfolio would support me in that situation, not as a perfect plan, but as a realistic one. Before I go further, I want to be clear about one thing. This is not a recommendation and it's not a model portfolio. Everyone's situation is different. Age, expenses, health, location, family and goals. What I'm sharing in this video is my framework. How I'd think about income, withdrawals and flexibility if work income stopped sooner than expected. The first principle when losing work income is usually that survival comes before optimization. The first thing I'd prioritize is not returns, it's runway. I'd want to make sure I have enough liquidity and predictable cash flow to avoid panicking and making rushed, wrong decisions. That means accepting slightly lower long-term returns in exchange for stability and time. Early retirement, especially involuntary retirement, isn't about optimization. It's about survival with dignity. So, how can this be translated into practical terms for people nearing retirement? In practical terms, I think in layers. The first layer is predictable income. Portfolio income from bonds, dividends, and any ongoing property cash flow. It doesn't need to cover everything, but it should cover a meaningful share of my core living costs, preferably shelter, food, water, and electricity. The second layer is flexibility. Cash or near cash assets like money market funds that let me absorb volatility without being forced to sell assets at the wrong time. And the third layer is growth. Assets designed to recover, compound over time, and protect against inflation. Each layer has a different job to assist my long-term retirement sustainability. Another thing that is often ignored is spending adjustments. If work ended tomorrow, my spending wouldn't stay exactly the same. Some costs would drop, others would shift, and the option to move to a lower cost environment, in my case Southeast Asia, changes the equation significantly. Portfolio sustainability isn't just about investments. It's about matching spending to reality. What I wouldn't do is immediately chase higher yield. I wouldn't panic sell growth assets. And I wouldn't assume markets will cooperate just because I need them to. The biggest risk in this situation isn't being too conservative. It's making irreversible decisions under stress. Following this layered approach is about reducing sequence of returns risk. By having income buffers, I reduce the chance of being forced to sell assets early in a downturn. That doesn't eliminate all risk, but it dramatically improves the odds that the plan survives bad timing. For me, that trade-off is worth far more than squeezing out a bit of extra return. I won't pretend this would be completely stress-free. Losing a job later in life is emotionally difficult, even if you're financially prepared. But having a plan, even an imperfect one, turns fear into decisions. And that's the real value of preparation. I've prepared by building a 1-year cash buffer and shifting about 50% of my gross portfolio into income assets, a mix of bonds, high-dividend funds and REITs. Together with the income from my Bali property, this can cover my core living costs, not fully in Singapore, but in places like Thailand or Malaysia. On top of that, I can selectively sell around 3.5 to 4% of my gross assets in good market conditions without being forced to sell during downturns. Now, you might disagree with me. Maybe you're comfortable taking more risk. Maybe you want less. That's why I use a layered approach. It gives you control. How much goes into growth, how much into income, and how much into cash, based on your life, not just a spreadsheet. Yes, there are studies that show pure growth strategies win over the long term. On paper, that's true. But psychological aspects are often not considered. Ask yourself this: how would you actually feel if your portfolio dropped 30 to 35% right at the start of your retirement? Let me know in the comments below. In the next video, I'll talk about how much income you actually need in retirement and why the number is often lower than people expect, especially if you have the option to live in a lower cost environment. If you're thinking about similar questions, consider subscribing. And see you in the next video.